Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our fall series of mid-career conversations. Today's session, as you all know, is titled Become a Maestro at Marketing Yourself in the Workplace. I'm super excited about our storyteller today. Her name is Keka Dasgupta, and you're going to hear about her really inspiring story shortly. My name is Leanne Kazanchi, and I'll be hosting today's conversation. As you all know, this event is virtual, and since we are not all gathered in the same space, I recognize the following land acknowledgement might not necessarily be for the territory that you are currently on. If this is the case, please take the responsibility to acknowledge the traditional territory you are on and the current treaty holders. The website native-land.ca is a great resource for this. And you'll find it in the chat in a sec, or it's already there. As a member of the York University community, I recognize many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York U acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area is known as Toronto, has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the dish with one spoon, wampum, Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. So the Mid-Career Conversation series was created with alumni like yourself and me in mind for us to connect, to hear each other's stories and other experiences from other alumni, ask questions, share our own unique journeys and ambitions. Today will be a special opportunity for us to come together as York alumni and share our stories and experiences. You'll see that there's a networking portion at the end for us to get to chat with each other. I'll just share a little bit about myself first before we introduce our guest. I am also a fellow York U alumna. I got my BA in 2015 in communications from York, and since then have completed a PR postgrad, a master's in digital marketing, and an MBA. I'm currently on the public affairs team at TD Bank, have been here for about 7 years. Prior to that, I spent some time in government. I was a ghostwriter for an MP, and I worked at a tech company. I'm really looking forward to being your host for the series. And with that, we'd also love to know a little bit more about you. So please feel free to use the chat feature and share where you are tuning from. For today's conversation, our storyteller will deliver a 20-minute talk. Afterwards, we will take questions from you. And as always, we ask that your questions be relevant and respectful. After the Q&A, we're going to stop the recording and move into breakouts for about 10 minutes or so for the networking portion of the event. And then we'll come back to this main room to wrap up. We really encourage you to have your video on, just like myself and our storyteller do. We get to see you and hear from you. However, this is entirely optional. And then lastly, please consider editing your screen name to read your first name, your last name, your pronouns, your degree and graduate year. So Leanne Kazanchi, she, her, BA 15, something like that. You can do that by clicking rename in the Zoom menu. That's all the housekeeping I have. So I'm very excited to welcome our storyteller for today, Keka Dasgupta. Keka is an award-winning PR and marketing expert and has worked with several world-renowned brands, including Nike, Disney, Mercedes-Benz, IKEA, Johnson & Johnson, and American Express. A very long but very impressive list. Keka transforms the way employees and students feel about themselves by teaching them how to apply a powerful global branding principles to their mental health, reducing anxiety, improving their mental well-being, and catapulting their performance. She also serves as expert counsel to the marketing industry's foremost leaders. Welcome, Keka.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Very excited to spend the next hour with everybody here. I wanted to start off with a little quiz. Can I do that and put everybody to work?
Please.
Okay, perfect. So what I would like to do, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to ask you to take a look at this particular ad. And if you can put into the chat box what company that ad might be from. Okay, so let's get started. And just see here what comes up. Can you guys put it into the chat box?
Let's see.
McDee's, yes, I see. McDonald's. Yes. So
Cool.
isn't this interesting that this picture doesn't actually have any particular information in terms of logo or name or anything, right? But we see a partial portion of the arch and the colors, and immediately we have a familiarity around it. So that was pretty good. Giving everybody an A plus. Okay, next one. Ready? What is this? Can anybody tell us? Put it into the chat box if you think you know what this is, what company it's from. Lego, right, right. Okay, so if you walk into a children's toy store, how many different companies and brands do we see? And all of us here look at this little box, this little block, and immediately we know that it's Lego. That's quite interesting, right? When you think about just how much we know. So let's keep going. We are all A plus students so far. I'm going to give you a pop quiz. How many words are in the English language? Now, I'm referring to the Oxford English Dictionary. How many words, if you had take your best guess and put it into the chat box, what's your best guess as to how many words are in the Oxford English Language Dictionary? 6.8 billion. Way too many to count, Isha says. Victor's 300,000. Josh is 500,000. A million. Okay, Asha, there's a million. Isha also agrees. That's a lot of words. Okay, now this is probably not including medical terms or legal terms from other sectors. The actual answer, well, I've got 50,000 there from Liz. The actual answer is 171,146. Now, of these particular words in the Oxford English language, we need on average about 3,000 words that we use every day in our vernacular. So you and I conversing over the course of a week, how many words do we use in the English language as we're going by our daily work? We're usually referencing around 3,000. I'm going to give you 3 words within the English language, and I want you to tell me what those 3 words might mean for you. Okay, so let's go into the chat box. Those 3 words are, just do it. Does that mean anything to you? Nike, right. 3 words. So imagine out of 171,146 words, and of the 3,000 words we use every single day, we all look at those 3 words and we immediately know that it's Nike. This is the power of branding. Now, how does that happen? How does Nike get to be so ubiquitous that those 3 words immediately tell us this? And what's the power of branding? Well, the logo of Nike doesn't even have the word on it, but this is how much people love their brands. Can you imagine? Now, I'm sure all of you have a favorite brand that you appreciate and you love. Sometimes the love for branding can go a little far too, literally where people have tattooed on their hands. But what is it that brands do? And how can we take a page out of that to help market ourselves? That's what really we're going to be covering today in the next little while. So I'm excited to share this with you because in the global branding world, emotional currency is the most important thing that brands use to connect with their audiences. So when Nike tells you just to do it, those 3 words are not just 3 words. It's laden with emotional currency that empowers you to say whether you are an elite athlete wearing the world's best performance equipment, and that might be coming from Nike, or you are an individual who just wants to get healthier and wants to go out for a walk and buys a pair of running shoes from Nike. When you put that on, you feel empowered, and Nike's telling you just do it. That emotional currency can come in many different forms, but it is really powerful. So we're going to talk about how we can get more of that. So I want to talk about selling back our magic in the workplace. So how do we market ourselves in the workplace, just like Nike and Lego and McDonald's and these companies that we just looked at? The number one thing we need to do is sell back to the leaders and managers and the audiences that are most important to us. Because if you notice, if you look at any particular brand, they market themselves unabashedly. Like Coca-Cola, if you go to a Coca-Cola installation, you're going to see the Coca-Cola red everywhere. You'll see the silhouette of the bottle. The logo is splashed everywhere. And Coca-Cola is like, welcome to Coca-Cola land. This is us. But how many of us do that in our work every day? We might be a little bit afraid that we're going to come off being pompous or egotistical, but we never actually accuse brands of being egotistical, do we? So there's an important message in this, and it's one of actually the first things that I learned in my workplace. I'm just going to stop sharing for a quick moment so I can see you better. Um, when I worked at IKEA in-house in their public relations department, one of the best lessons that I ever learned was from our manager, because we were in a retail company working on public relations as a very specific niche. So retail managers, who were the decision makers of the company, don't necessarily understand what we do, the intricacies and the in and outs of what we do every day. But what I learned from my manager was that we have to sell back what we do in real time. And that meant that every time we had a particular accomplishment, every time we did something really well, in the everyday conversations, we would run across the hallway, we would go into the lunchroom and share with our fellow colleagues, and we would say, guess what, we just had a great PR win, look at what happened, look at what we've done. And the idea behind this wasn't touting our chest and saying we are so amazing, but actually celebrating the win for the company, which is a shared goal for all of us. And when every single day the little bits of micro information that we would share in terms of wins would come out to our leaders, suddenly they would immediately think that we were doing really amazing work. And in the absence of sharing that with people, most people wouldn't understand what we did and wouldn't really know what we were doing. So I would love to ask you in the chat box if you could put in. So my question to you is, what is the biggest challenge that you have in the workplace when it comes to marketing yourself? Where do you get stuck? Where are you unsure? What is it that you would love to get from today? So if you could just put in like a quick answer into the chat box, I would kind of love to hear a little bit more from all of you. This is where we need some musically on the Jeopardy music, right? The
We really do.
yeah. There we go. Okay, thank you, Ivana, for starting us off. How do you market yourself but not come across as bragging? That's a very great point, and we're going to talk about that. We've got other ones: how to not sound pompous, making people respect me and hear me with open kindness. That's a great point. Sharing my accomplishment without bragging. See, this is a big problem that we have, right? We all worry because we don't want to come across as egotistical. It's a very common problem. Getting my product out to the market, getting recognition. Thank you, Victor. Arshad is also saying making success statements about myself and the team, and about impactful and timely. Yes. Not being judged by others. That's a great feedback piece as well. Feedback and recognition, and have been a homemaker for years, Liz. That's wonderful. Since raising a family, a really incredible job that we have to do in society, right? Raising our family. Okay. Thank you for sharing these. Okay. So what I'm hearing really is garnering recognition feels hard to do, and it often feels like we're going to brag or we're going to kind of be on our high horse, which can be a little bit tricky. And so one of the things that I want to talk about from that perspective is, when you're selling back, how do we share authentic stories? So I'm going to show you a couple of slides on my screen here just as we go. So one of the things I want you to think about, instead of bragging and being, hey, look what I did, look what I did, we need to find either a common goal. So, when I worked at IKEA, I would talk about, look at what we did for the company. This is a great win for IKEA, because everybody had that shared goal. But the other thing is this: a smile is contagious. Energy and passion is contagious. When you come into the workplace and you share something with real, authentic excitement and happiness or passion, it's hard for people to come in and say, that was so braggy. And that's what brands do. Brands often will come across and they're standing in their power of who they are, but they engage you and they bring you into the story. And so there are ways in which we can tell stories that feel very authentic and very real, versus being showy. So the idea behind this is, you don't want to put something up on a pedestal and ask for the accolades. It's about sharing something fun. When you have a good day at work and you come home, you want to share it with your family or you want to share it with your friends, people aren't thinking that you're bragging in that capacity, because you're really honestly excited about it. And the way you share that story makes a difference. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples from my own personal career. This was a moment for me where I was really excited. We won an award at an international award competition. Has anybody ever been to an award show in their sector or seen pictures of this kind of thing on social media, on LinkedIn? Just put in an exclamation mark in the chat box if you've seen this kind of picture. Oh, so-and-so's won an award, right? Julie, thank you so much. I see your exclamation mark. We see that a lot, right? Thank you. Yes, Allison, Rebecca. Yes, we see this a lot. So if you were passing by on LinkedIn and you saw this, or you saw this in an interoffice, in an email that's going out to all the communications, it's fine. It's great. It's exciting. But is it really that exciting? It's not really thumb stopping exciting. You're probably just going to whisk right by it. So this is the saying, right? We just won an international award. It's very exciting. Now, what if we were to turn that story into something more real and authentic, the kind of thing we would share with family and friends? What if I showed you this picture instead? And would you say that if you saw something like this, it would kind of make you stop for a moment? This is likely the picture you would share with family and friends. And that one standing on stage is usually what you would likely share with your work colleagues because we want to look professional. But professional and being at work still means we can bring our whole selves to the world. So when we shared this with our company, this was when I was with the agency DDB Canada, we said we just won the Oscars of the PR industry because it was the top world award in public relations. And do you see the difference between we won an IABC Gold Quill Award and you see everybody standing on stage versus seeing a picture like this with our excitement? This is like my hi mom moment on stage, and I'm sharing that with people. That's what we want to be able to share. When you share something like this and say we just won the Oscars of the PR industry, we're so excited, it's really hard for someone to come in and say, wow, you're just making this all about yourself. They get pulled into your excitement. So let's look at another example. I recently joined the board of the original Santa Claus parade. I'm really excited about it. This past Sunday, just worked on the parade. It was very, very exciting. If I was sharing this with my managers and my leaders and whatnot, and I wanted to say, hey, look, this is a really exciting thing that I did, people might say you've joined a board, you're working on a campaign. That's good. Nice for you, right? So this is the picture of me with Santa. Can you tell the little Keka inside of me is super, super happy and so excited to be with Santa and Mrs. Claus? Instead of just saying that I joined the board, though, what I did in communicating this to my workplace colleagues was I can now put on my resume that I am Santa's official speechwriter. And suddenly people like that because it takes them back to their moments with Santa. It makes the whole conversation a bit more creative, and it makes you think about something a little bit differently. Now, you might be saying to me, okay, Keka, this is lovely, this is fun, but you know what? I work in an industry that's more serious, and I can't just have some fun. People won't take me seriously. There are ways in which you can do this. This was me moderating a think tank for Capital One, and this picture for me shows leadership from my perspective at a professional level. It's a story that kind of communicates the power that we can bring to the workforce, and it's just an image that tells a story a little bit more differently. So I want you to think about what that could look for you. So in the chat box for a moment, can you just share with me perhaps the one thing, the one accomplishment that you would like to celebrate in the workforce right now that maybe you haven't done yet because you're afraid that people will think you're bragging or you've got an ego? Can you kind of share maybe the one accomplishment that you're really proud of that you want to make sure people know in your workplace? Let's kind of see some of the answers in the chat box. Your impact with students, Allison. That's a great, great piece. Stephanie says she was the chair of the DEI committee in her last job. Jenny, the right to play intern and Indigenous community involvement. Virginia started your own business. Congratulations. Amazing. Ivana, product certification. Okay, amazing. So we each have opportunities to share something, but sometimes we're afraid to do it because we don't want to come across being taken, being perceived as saying it in the wrong way. But let's just take a look for a quick second here. Stephanie, you talked about being the chair of the DEI committee in your last job. What I would love to see, if you're sharing that kind of story with your office colleagues in your workplace, can you share that with some of the key lessons that you learned in that role? What were some of the aha moments you had as the DEI chair that you could now share in a conversation with your workplace and your colleagues today? Maybe there's some personal stories or experiences that you came across that you could share. So as opposed to like, you need to pat me on the back because look, I am, I was serving as a DEI chair, you're now pulling them into your story and sharing with them and perhaps giving them some more value based on the role that you had. And so storytelling from that perspective from your stories can be really, really critical in making that difference. Let's see here. Virginia, you talked about starting your own business. We all have a why. All of us want to do things for a particular reason. As you started your business, when you are sharing that information with your clients or other potential people in the industry or your colleagues, what is the why behind it? And what courage did it take for you to do that? Did it feel scary at some point? And how did you overcome that fear? How did you find the courage to get there? So what we're looking for is the emotional currency. The same way that brands use emotional currency, we talk about Nike saying, just do it. We looked at Coca-Cola, for example, saying, you're going to find happiness around our brand. So when you think about your stories, I've just opened my business. What is that emotional currency you can share with people? Because that's what people can connect to. Lucy, you said that you just launched your coaching program. Amazing. So what prompted you to do that? What need are you fulfilling right now that your audiences need to hear? What is a gap that you are fulfilling? And so when you're sharing your news, you can provide that context. Zach, thank you for sharing that link as well. Amazing. For DEI, I see, Stephanie, you said it was fun coaching and interesting to get creative with agendas. And I wanted to add new things to it. Okay, so when you added those new things in each meeting, what impact did that have for the people in the meeting? Did they appreciate it? Was there something that they saw that was new and different? You can share that type of perspective in your stories. So let's just keep going here. I'm going to share a couple more screens. Thank you so much for being so interactive with me. I really appreciate it. And it generated lots of conversation, Stephanie. I love that. Okay. So I was in marketing for a really long time. And then I had this sort of midlife crisis. We're talking about mid-career conversations. And I kept thinking, is this it? I need to do more. And I got into professional speaking, as you heard from my bio, around mental health and personal empowerment. So here's a picture of me where I am promoting myself on stage. People can see that I'm in a large audience. This was at the Winter Garden Theatre in downtown Toronto. But this picture is kind of ubiquitous. A lot of people will see it and be like, okay, again, scroll right by. When I show pictures that have more of my emotion in it, it communicates more of what I'm trying to share with the world, right? So I want you to think about when you're sharing pictures, when you're sharing images, when you are talking about yourself in any capacity, what is it that can connect people with you? And so, in that regard, what I really want, oops, sorry, I just missed something here. In that regard, I wanted to share a thought with you specifically, and that is that I want you, when you're sharing your stories, to not just make it about yourself, but make it about them. And one of the questions that I would ask you to think about when it comes to that every brand has the answer to is, how do you make people feel? Because we have emotional currency, we operate on emotional currency. I want you to think about, in an everyday world where you come into the workforce, when you are doing the things you're doing that you want some recognition and acknowledgement for, how are you making people feel in the past? How are you making them feel in the moment? What is your personal brand DNA? What is so uniquely you that nobody else can replicate that? So for that, what I'd like to do is do an exercise with you in the last few minutes that I have with you. So if you could take a piece of paper and just write down on that piece of paper, think about somebody that you admire. It could be a historical figure. It could be somebody who's alive today or someone who's passed. It can be a celebrity, but just write down the name of a historical figure that you admire. And then once you've written it down on a piece of paper, can you put it into the chat box for us, just so that we have a sense of, the kinds of people that inspire us in the room? Allison, my dad. Yes. I'm very inspired by my dad too, so I love that. Curtis Jackson, 50 Cent. Yes. Oh, Lucy, you talked about your daughter. Absolutely. That's great. Amazing. Dawn, my parents. Yep. It's incredible how important family can be, right? And the influence they have on us. Victor, my kids. We've got my parent, Greta. Yes, Greta Thunberg, Valentina, for sure. Makes a big difference. Okay, so now that you have your name, what I'd like you to do is write down on a piece of paper the 5 either qualities or values that you admire most about this person. Okay, so we'll just give you a couple of minutes. Leanne, we have just a few more minutes left, right?
Yep, you got it.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, just write down on a piece of paper. I don't want you to think about it too much. The first things that come to your mind, write the 5 qualities you admire most about this person. I see Michelle Obama on the list. Yes, Benjamin Franklin. Yes, empathy, self-awareness, hard work. Yeah. Isha, my parents. Beautiful. Relatable, warm, kind, caring. Amazing. Jenny, thank you for sharing that. Honesty, creativity, friendly. Oh, Liz, my spouse. Yes. Wisdom, humble, self-awareness, sacrificial, truthful. Look at that. Dawn, hardworking, caring, helpful, giving, empathy. Beautiful. Victor, warm, happy, smart, loving, respectful. Amazing. Okay. All right. So this is going to get a little bit tricky now. I want you for the next part of the exercise to write your name on the other side of the paper. So kind of like in a column, right? Beside it, write your name at the top of the paper. Danielle says honesty, hard work, generous. Okay. Now that you've written your name on the other side of the paper, I want you to write what you admire about yourself. So, what values, qualities are most important to you about yourself? What do you love most about the values you carry? I know this is a little bit harder, but again, I don't want you to think about it too much. I just want you to put it down really, really quickly. Non-judgmental and happy, Stephanie. Amazing. If you're finding this exercise to be a little bit hard, can you write the word yes in the chat box just to see if we are all collectively feeling a certain way? Patience, empathy, hardworking, truthful, and considerate. Liz, beautiful. Victor, honest, trust, open, respectful, happy. Allison, yes, you're not alone. This can be a hard exercise because, a doctor, a surgeon can perform surgery, life-saving surgery on people, but they can't operate on themselves, right? So it is often really hard for us to see that. Yes. And we don't think about ourselves. You're right, Isha. We don't think about it that way. But brands, global brands are very, very clear on the values that they stand by and how they make people feel. So I want you to think today about when you're marketing yourself and you want to market yourself as powerfully as a global brand. I want you to think about these values that are important to you. So can you please give me an exclamation mark in the chat box if you've seen any duplication from the person you admire and the values you had on that list and the values that you admire about yourself? Can you give me a quick exclamation mark if you see some? Yes. Right. Dawn, Brittany, Arshad, Liz, Victor. Yes. So isn't this interesting? So this is what I want you to take away at the end of the day. I'm going to stop sharing for a quick second here. Okay. This is the most important thing I want you to take away in this process is this. Brands know their values, they know how they make people feel, but we often don't articulate that for ourselves. We feel it, but we don't articulate it. It's so important for us to really get to know ourselves better. And here's the thing, the person that you admire the most, you've got those qualities on the one column. And if there's overlap between some of that and the values you have, do you know why that is? Because that's the emotional currency you share with each other. You admire that person for those values because you have those values yourself. So when you're going into the workforce and you're marketing yourself in some capacity, I just want you to remember that you are going to make this about the person you're speaking to too. It's not just about you. It's the shared value that you have with the person you're speaking to, whether it's your manager or the leadership committee or employees or a new prospect or a job interview, it doesn't matter. You want to be able to find that value commonality. This is a value that's important to me. I'm going to share my story with you because I think that value is something we can share together, and suddenly that emotional currency is shared with each other. So take the list of 5 values, think about the stories that you have and how you can communicate them with some creative sound bites, with some interesting stories that are real and authentic, and make sure that whatever you do, the connection you make with the people that you talk about is most important, because when you do that, people will not think you're bragging, they will celebrate with you. Thank you, Leanne. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Wow. Thank you very much, Keka. That was wonderful. And I found it really personally, and we'll hear from the others shortly, but I think for me, the part that I found fascinating and something I was kind of subconsciously applying to me and my job, and working in a organization that is a bank and isn't necessarily totally open to creativity all the time, is it made me think of how we often talk about emotional intelligence and every always, and how important it is in leadership and building relationships. But it's almost like you leveraged that philosophy or that theory in the way that you're talking about yourself to others and like portraying your accomplishments, which I really, really love. That I feel like we're often, at least like I feel like people I talk to talk about imposter syndrome and not wanting to like, brag or amplify things that they're working on or that they're proud of, in fear of coming off as bragging or egotistical. But I feel like the way you did it was it was so beautiful, and even as you were talking about your accomplishments, they're huge, but it made me feel like I was part of it, like you included the audience as part of that. And so thank you. That was really wonderful. I feel like I have some takeaways for myself from this wonderful presentation. Um, let's open things up for questions. I know everyone was really engaged, so thank you for that, and thank you for all your feedback and for sharing your experiences and things that matter to you. But let's take a couple of minutes to ask Keka some questions. I know I have one, so I can start things off, but please use the chat feature to send in your questions, and I can read them out to Keka. So Keka, my question is, when I think of the highlights that you shared with us, I feel like there are definitely some takeaways, and it's easier for people who are more comfortable talking about yourself, about themselves. So people who are more extroverted. But when I think about people who are more introverted and more quiet and, let's say, shy or reserved, they may have a harder time marketing themselves. So any advice to people who fall under that category?
Yeah, absolutely. So for people that are introverts who might feel a little bit more shy, or you kind of don't want to tout like, look at me, I would invite you to think about, when you have something that you want to share, I would invite you to think about what is the impact that other people can get from your story, because I guarantee you every story has a lesson we can pull from. And suddenly when you make it about that impact and not about you, everything changes. And so that's the kind of thing where, whether and it's your style and it's your comfort. The idea behind this is you've got to stand in your own power and your own brand, right? So if you're an introvert, you don't have to be an extrovert. You absolutely don't have to. You can celebrate you and who you are. Introverted people are often so thoughtful. They are the ones who come in and give that like one-on-one conversation with somebody that can be life-changing, versus people who might be standing in front of a megaphone and sharing a message out to everybody. There's good and bad to both sides. So I want you to own your introvertedness if you are an introvert, but think about the impact or the lesson. When you want to share this story, how does it benefit somebody else? If they were in something similar, what could they do? And I'll just give you a quick example, Leanne, as we're waiting for some questions to come in. But
Yeah.
when I decided I was going to be a professional speaker. I wanted to go into anti-bullying. I'm not a teacher. I'm a marketer. And on Facebook, the memories pop up. And so a memory popped up from, I think, 5 or 8 years ago. I'm going to see if I can find the link, and I'll share it in the chat in a moment. But it was 5 years ago, or however many, where I put out, it was my very first kind of moment where I said, I've got a workshop for anti-bullying at schools. Are there any teachers or anybody that I know? Because I'll do it for free. I just want to tape it. And it was just like so scary for me, but I just put it out there. And really, I wanted to check it off and be like, okay, universe, get off my back. I've done it. But that catapulted my career. And when that popped up for me a few weeks ago, I was like, oh my God, over the last 5 years, when I think about the things I've been able to do as a result, I'm just like, pinch myself.
Yeah.
I spoke at the Global Speakers Summit in Dublin, Ireland, where there were like the best of the best
Wow.
people, and I was there. I got to do it. I've judged in international speaking competitions, had a long list of things. So of course I want to share. I'm excited. I want to share. And I started my post, and I started saying, oh my God, this was from 5 years ago. And since then, I've done this, I've done that. And then a fellow speaker friend of mine gave me a challenge, and I thought, oh, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to trust her. She's brilliant. And I followed what she said. And she said to me, I want you to take a post that's about you, and don't use any personal pronouns. So don't use I, me, nothing like that. And I thought, this is going to be so hard to do. How do I
Yeah.
talk about the accolades I'm so proud of and
Yeah.
not use me or I in a single post? So I'm going to find the link and I'll put it on. It took a little bit of work and a little bit of editing,
I'm
but I
so
did it.
curious.
I did it. I put it in there. But you know what I realized in that exercise that she gave me? Suddenly the post was not about me.
Mm.
Suddenly it was shining a mirror and a light on, hey, I had this dream. I felt scared to do it, but when I did it, 5 years later, these are all the things that happen. And the goal is, if you feel scared, take that step, because this here is proof that you can do it. And by eliminating my singular pronouns in that, suddenly people were reading it as a third party, third person piece, and they could relate. And
Yeah.
immediately, like if I had written it in a first person thing, it would have come across as egotistical. But it completely changed the way people received it. So it's a great thought for us to think about, but it's all about the impact we're leaving on others. So that was
Yeah.
a long question, but yeah.
No, I love that. I like when you said that you were talking or you had to write it in third person. I was like, I can't even. I write for a living, and I don't even know how I would do that. So that, yeah, please do share. I'd love to read
I
that.
will for sure.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. I'll read it out. So, a question from Stephanie. Can you offer examples of where to find the best wording to describe ourselves? Are there any websites, words out of dictionary, etc., that we can describe ourselves in an interview and in the workplace? But what if we are shy?
Oh, okay, perfect. So, the interesting part about this question, I think, is that it's not actually ultimately, Stephanie, if I can say this very with a lot of hugs, it's not necessarily about just the words. It's more about how you feel about sharing. And so I want you to more think about when you've got the story. So here's what I would ask you to do: take a piece of paper, an Excel chart, or whatnot, and just write some of the stories of some of the accomplishments you've had. So and I'm looking at the chat thing here. I should probably be looking closer. So make a list, an audit of the different stories you would like people to know, and just pretend like write it as if you're not sharing with anybody else. So there's no pressure on, I got to make this perfect. This is for you. It's just your notes. Write a list of the different stories that have come across that you want to be able to share so people know about it. And then after that, I want you to think about the impact we said, right? What's the lesson that could be learned from this? And I want you to think about your own confidence and how you feel about sharing that. So if I can give you an example, Stephanie, because I've experienced this myself and it was just an aha moment for me. I've been marketing for 25 years. So I do a lot of new business work for agencies. When new people come in, they've got questions on how to work. And so whether I'm doing it for clients or for myself, if I'm on a marketing call with you and you call me and you need marketing help, I'll say, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. Let's talk about this. Who's your audience? What do you need? And I have like a certain tone of voice because I know this stuff and I'm excited about it, but I know it really well. So I'm just going. When I got into speaking, in my head, I was like, I'm a marketer. I'm not a teacher. I'm not an educator. What am I doing? Who am I? What right do I have to even do this? But I felt the calling. So I sort of ignored that voice and kept going. But I caught myself one day. I had, I think at like 1 o'clock, I had an appointment for a marketing client. I'm talking about it, full of confidence. And then I jumped in at 2 o'clock for a new business call with a speaker opportunity. Stephanie, no word of a lie. I was like, yeah, so this is Keka, and I have a workshop that I think will really make a big difference for you. And I could feel the difference in my voice. And I was like, who is this Keka? This is not marketing Keka. This is speaker Keka that has very little confidence in what she's saying. And just seeing those two sides of me really opened my eyes to the fact that when we're presenting something, it's really important that we believe in ourselves. So what I would ask you to do, Stephanie, is forget the websites and stuff online. Like if you want a synonym or a dictionary, like ideas, of course, but a website isn't going to help you to find the way to share your story. It's you in your mindset recognizing the importance. So if you've got that sort of story audit and you have the impact that's there, then I would say practice it for yourself. What I would do is this, and I've done this, go into Zoom and record yourself, nobody else in the room, record yourself as if you were talking and sharing your story. Then walk away for a little while, come back and play it and watch your expressions, watch your voice intonations, watch for confidence. How confident are you? Because that's the most important thing people are going to see: confidence, excitement, and passion. Look for those. And then you're going to become much more aware of how you come across, and then practice it again. Practice it again until you feel comfortable. I hope that's helpful.
I think it was. And I think people are finding it helpful because I see the questions coming in the chat, but also in direct messaging. So I'm going to take one more, Keka, just because I know we're running out of time. And then for the folks who have sent in questions that we're not able to get to, please ask them in the networking portion. And afterwards, once we come back to the main room, I think we'll have a couple minutes there. You're getting one person is asking for that link, so it seems like other people want to see that link to that post that you wrote. A lot of people are saying thank you, so thanks very much for everything you're sharing. I think it's really helping everyone. The last question I'll read out quickly is from Jenny, and she's asking how to address difficult moments when it comes to confidence without making it about me or the impact it had about me. So maybe we're talking about the highlights, the highlight reel of our life, but maybe how do we address the not so great moments?
Okay, perfect. So I find that when it comes to, God, I can't seem to multitask. Give me one quick second. I'm just going to see if I can
No
find
worries.
the share button for this post while we're talking. Um, Bear with me
No
one
worries at all.
here. Oh,
While you're
goodness.
doing that, I'll tell you that we have some people saying that they're really enjoying the tips.
Oh,
And one specific one that stood out that people are replying to is that they really like the idea of writing things down because sometimes they forget what they've done and are reminded by friends and family. So I think the old school pen and paper sometimes might not be so bad.
yes, 100%. Okay, I've got to find a way to share this. It is public on my profile. So if you go to Keka on Facebook, you can find it. But I'm going to figure this out before the networking. But I want to take the question. So we talked about this was how to address difficult moments with confidence without making it about me and the impact it had on me. Okay, great. So a few things. First of all, Jenny, I think if it had an impact on you, I think that that's important. The people in your workplace need to be aware of it, but it's not about victimhood, right? When people sort of come across as a victim, I think a lot of people, it just becomes something where I'm expecting something from you. So it's more in those kinds of situations about talking about your shared goals. So if you are having a difficult circumstance with somebody, a difficult situation, what is the ultimate goal between the two of you that you share? So I've had difficult conversations with my manager. I remember, when I worked at IKEA, I had a manager that I really fully admired. She was brilliant, so intelligent. I learned so much from her, but our communications would go like this, and I might be thinking this way, she's communicating that way, and we would completely lose it. So then we would have difficult conversations because she would get upset with me. She wouldn't communicate it right away. It would show up in a performance review 6 weeks later or 6 months later. But what I started to recognize was that we had shared common goals. So we were working in a department together. We both wanted the results to be really impactful. And so then I was able to start by having that conversation to say, okay, I know we're coming in to have a particular discussion, but like you, I'm in the same place as you are in that we want X, Y, and Z. So start by sharing that common goal. Suddenly, it's no longer an adversarial discussion. You're on the same page at the same time. So it's like, listen, you and I don't see eye to eye. I might be hurt by you. You might have done something wrong, or vice versa, but we have this shared goal, and let's make a commitment that we're going to get to this shared goal. So that's number one. Secondly, if you have had boundaries broken in some way, or the impact on you is significant, it's important to share it, but it's important for you to own it, right? So I remember one time where I was supposed to send this one particular video to this media, and I kind of screwed up on the career, and it didn't go. This was early on in my career, but it was a big mistake. And so my manager came to me, and she was upset, and she said this, and I felt very upset because I had done so much else, like I was killing myself and all this other work, and I felt like this was one administrative mistake. It was a human mistake, and you're like raking me over this for this and not looking at the bigger picture. And what I did instead was I said, I just want to share with you right now in the moment, I'm feeling upset and I'm feeling impacted by this because from my perspective, I'm seeing this. I recognize that this is an important situation and there was, circumstances that there were consequences to this. So what you want to do is you want to come from owning your own feelings, not putting it on somebody else. I own this, and then taking responsibility for whatever action or, unwanted income came from it, taking that responsibility and then saying, can I add some context to this? I've been working really, really hard on all of these other things, and this was hard for me. What can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? I will take responsibility for what I'm doing, but can we work out a system to make sure that I'm not feeling burnt out when we're going through this? So, you see what I mean? We are taking responsibility for it, but at the same time, you're letting it be known and you're looking for a solution together. And that kind of changes the dynamic of the conversation usually.
Yeah, and it's way more productive in the end of the day because it's working for the both of you. Thank you, Keka. I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to say thank you to everyone for your questions. We're going to move into the networking portion of the event. So in a couple of minutes, you'll be prompted to join a breakout room with 2 to 3 other alumni. Networking questions will be broadcasted to your room. If you'd like to use them, we'll have just under 10 minutes to connect, and then we'll meet right back here in the main room.